Hello there. Tonight we stand at the lip of a frozen cave while winter leans out of the dark like it has been waiting for you personally. Snow has hardened over the slope below. The wind comes low, not in grand dramatic gusts, but in narrow, needling currents that find the gaps at your wrists, your neck, and the place where your foot wrapping has loosened. This is not a cosy prehistoric sleepover with attractive fur decor and flattering firelight. This is a shelter test, and you probably won't survive this if you mistake inside a cave for safe. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you are listening from and what the local time is there. It is quietly wonderful to imagine all those different rooms settling down at once. Now, dim the lights and let the cave mouth become the first thing you have to read. You do not rush in. Nobody sensible does. The entrance is where the cave speaks most clearly, and tonight it has a lot to say. Snow dusts the outer stones. A thin crust has formed where earlier meltwater ran down and froze again. The floor just inside the opening is not flat but tilted, broken, gritty, and scattered with the leftovers of earlier use. Charcoal crumbs, splinters of bone, a few sharp stone flakes, and a darker smear where a fire has once sat or failed. The wind comes through the mouth and slides along the ground. That matters more than the view. Cold air sinks, pools, and crawls. A hollow in the floor can hold it like water in a bowl. A higher patch may be drier. A crack in the wall can become a private little pipe for misery. You stand with your weight shifting from one wrapped foot to the other, feeling for the direction of the draft before anyone decides where bodies will lie. The old idea that Ice Age people simply lived in caves is too simple. During the Upper Paleolithic, people used caves and rock shelters in many ways, but they also made camps in the open, built shelters from hides, wood, bone and turf, and moved with animals, seasons and weather. A cave is not automatically a home, it is a possibility. Tonight, because the cold outside is too hard and the light is falling, this possibility has to be judged quickly and well. A person ahead of you crouches near the entrance and touches the ground with the back of the fingers. Not the palm, the back of the fingers, gives a quicker answer, and tonight the answer is unpleasant. Cold, but not wet there. Wet would be worse. Wet means bedding stiffens, hides drink the chill, and sleep becomes a long argument with your own bones. The crouching person scrapes at the grit with a flat piece of bone, then lifts it to the nose. Smell is part of the test. The cave carries smoke from older fires, damp stone, old hide, and something faintly animal that may be harmless and may not. You breathe through your nose and try to separate the layers. Humans are not the only creatures who like a roof in winter. Cave bears, hyenas, wolves, foxes, and smaller animals have all used shelters like this in different places and times. Some leave fur, some leave dung, some leave gnawed bones. Some leave enough sign that even a tired person turns around. Near the left wall lies a cracked bone with tooth marks. Old, perhaps. Not enough to send everyone away, but enough to make the group look harder. Someone lifts a smoking brand. It is not a heroic torch. It is a piece of burning wood that has opinions about going out. The flame leans, gutters, then brightens when a hand shields it from the entrance wind. The brand is carried inward a few steps, low enough to show the ground, high enough to keep from setting loose grass or hide scraps alight. Smoke rises, reaches the cave roof, flattens, and begins to move. Everyone watches the smoke. If it slides toward the entrance, the cave may allow a fire. If it rolls back into your faces, the night will become coughing, watering eyes, and bad sleep at best. The roof is low near the mouth, higher a little farther in. That could help. Or it could trap smoke in a pocket where someone will later try to sleep and learn the lesson through their lungs. The material record complicates the question of how often Ice Age people slept deep inside caves, rather than near entrances or rock shelters. Deep chambers preserve art, footprints, lamp marks, and traces of visits, but ordinary sleeping usually needs air, light, workspace, hearths, and an escape route that does not require crawling through blackness while half awake. So tonight you stay near the zone where daylight once reached and where the fire might breathe. A small screen of hide is pulled toward one side of the opening. It is stiff from cold and old use. Two people lift it by its edges, while another wedges a stone against the lower corner. This is not a door. It is a negotiation with wind. It blocks one current and creates another. A bad screen can make smoke worse. A good screen can give the fire just enough shelter to live without filling the cave with haze. There is a strange little practical habit in the way the entrance is handled. Snow is packed into some gaps but not others. A stone is rolled against a place where air cuts across ankle height. A loose flap is left open higher up because smoke needs somewhere to go. To a stranger, it might look careless. To the people who have slept in places like this before, the pattern is the point. You do not seal yourself in. You shape the breathing of the shelter. Your outer hide creaks when you bend. The fur at your shoulder has frozen slightly where your breath touched it on the walk up. Under the wrap, your body is still carrying the day. Tired thighs from climbing, hands that smell faintly of fat and stone dust. A dry throat from cold air, and the dull ache in your feet that arrives whenever standing becomes waiting. Waiting is already part of the night. Inside the cave, the first safe patch is claimed not with words, but with objects. A rolled skin is set down, a tool pouch is placed beside it. A child is guided away from the darker dip farther in. Nothing is explained fully, it does not need to be. In a small group, placement is language. The old, the young, the tired, the useful, the difficult, the respected, and the recently annoying all have positions, though nobody would draw a map and call it society. The brand is lowered to the old hearth stain. Dry splinters are brought forward. Someone has saved the best bits in a pouch under clothing, where body warmth kept them from taking damp. A few curls of shaved wood catch first, then a twig, then nothing for a breath long enough to make everyone look at it. The flame returns, thin and yellow, and begins to work along the edge. The cave changes immediately, but not completely. Fire does not erase winter, it edits it. Your face warms before your back does. The floor stays cold, the entrance still pulls at your ankles. The deep dark behind the hearth remains untouched, holding stone, old marks, possible passages, and whatever your tired mind decides to lend it. A spark jumps and dies near a flint chip. Someone pushes the chip aside with a bone point. Another person sniffs toward the darker left wall again, still not fully satisfied. The dog near the entrance, if it can be called fully yours, lowers its head and smells the threshold with grave importance. Then it sneezes. This is useful information, probably. It is also not the dignity one hopes for in a guardian. The flame strengthens enough to show the cave roof. Black soot stains older than this evening mark the stone above. People have burned fires here before, or in a place much like it, and left the cave with its smoky memory. That does not promise safety. It only says the shelter has been attempted. You stand just inside the threshold while the group keeps reading. Smoke, floor, smell, wind, old bones, the dog's uncertain nose, the way the flame leans when the screen shifts. Shelter begins here not as comfort, but as a set of small refusals. Refuse the wet patch. Refuse the bad draft. Refuse the deep dark. Refuse the old animal corner. Refuse to waste the good fuel too soon. The fire takes another twig and holds it. The entrance wind thins. The smoke moves toward the opening in a narrow grey band. No one relaxes fully, but several shoulders lower by a finger's width. That is enough for now. Outside, the snow brightens faintly under the last light. Inside, the cave has not become kind. It has only become usable, and the first usable thing is where your body may stand, while the next decision waits on the cold floor. The next decision waits on the cold floor, and the floor is in no hurry to be agreeable. Firelight has begun to reach farther across the entrance zone, but it does not make the ground kinder. It only reveals the terms. A ridge of stone near your left foot, a shallow hollow where cold air sits, a dark, damp streak close to the wall. little white splinters of bone mixed with grit, a flint flake turned edge up, patient as a thorn. You lower yourself into a crouch because the body understands height differently at night. Standing, you can pretend a patch of floor is almost level. Crouching, you see the slope. Sitting, you feel the truth. The chosen place must be close enough to the fire to borrow warmth, far enough not to catch sparks, sheltered from the entrance draft, dry beneath the first layer, and not so close to the wall that damp stone spends the night breathing into the hides. That is a lot to ask from a cave. A person beside you scrapes loose grit from a patch with the edge of a stone tool. The sound is rough and small, a private weather on the floor. Scrape, pause, hand test. Scrape, pause, hand test. The cleared place is not smooth, it is only less hostile. A pebble comes free, then another. One is flicked toward the hearth edge and immediately regretted because it lands too close to someone's knee. A look passes. No words. The pebble is moved again. Ice Age groups often organise living spaces around hearths, work areas, refuse, and sleeping or resting zones, though the traces vary from site to site. Archaeologists can sometimes identify patterns through ash, tool debris, butchered bone, pigment, and compacted floors. What looks like a scatter may have once been a set of practical boundaries. Here, those boundaries are being made again by hand. Sharp flakes belong away from skin. Wet ground belongs under nobody. The best patch is not the nicest. It is the one with the fewest objections. You press your knuckles to the ground. The cold answers immediately, but the surface is dry. Dry is good. Dry is almost a compliment. Your fingertips move across the stone and packed sediment, feeling for hidden points. A sliver catches under a nail. You pull it free and hold it close to the firelight. Flint. Thin, bright-edged, easy to miss. Good for cutting, bad for sleeping. It goes into a small pile with other dangerous little successes. The deeper part of the cave looks tempting for one breath. No wind there, no snow glare, no exposed mouth. But the firelight weakens quickly as the passage bends, and the air beyond it has a stillness that does not invite trust. Darkness can hide a better floor. It can also hide a drop, an animal scrape, damp clay, bad air, or the simple embarrassment of falling over a stone in front of people who will remember it until spring. So the group does what experience teaches. It stays in the workable band where fire, air, escape and floor can all be managed at once. Near the right side, someone has found a shallow depression. At first it seems useful because it blocks a little wind. Then a hand rests inside it longer, and the decision changes. Cold pools there. You can feel it with your skin before you can explain it. The hollow is rejected. A rolled skin is placed partly across it, not as bedding, but as a barrier to stop a child from choosing it later by accident. Children have an alarming talent for finding the worst place and becoming attached to it. The wall offers another false promise. Its curve could shelter the back. Its stone could also draw warmth out through shoulder and spine all night. A strip of old mineral damp shines where the fire catches it. Someone touches it, smells the fingers, and shakes the head. Too wet. Too close. A sleeping hide pressed there would wake heavy and cold. A person would wake with one side aching and the other side angry on its behalf. The evidence remains frustratingly divided on how often organic bedding survives well enough for researchers to know exactly what people laid down under themselves in Ice Age shelters. Grass, reeds, leaves, moss, bark, fur, hide and brush can vanish while stone tools remain, looking far more important than they were in the actual sleeping experience. Still, rare finds from prehistoric sites, along with practical sense, show that people used plant materials and skins to separate bodies from ground when they could. Nobody needs a theory to dislike sleeping directly on frozen stone. A bundle of dry stems is untied. It releases a dusty smell that rises through smoke and old hide. The stems are not soft in the way a tired modern mind might hope. They are stiff, bent and uneven. One has a seed head still attached, Another is too woody and gets tossed aside. A few are laid crosswise over the cleared patch, then pressed down with a flat palm. The sound is crisp. The child nearby reaches for a stem, perhaps to play, perhaps to chew, and an adult removes it without drama. The quirky problem is that bedding has direction. Stems laid the wrong way jab through hides. A fur placed hair side down may grip the layer beneath but lose some comfort above. Hair side up may feel warmer to the skin but slide over dry grass when someone turns. A thick hide under the hip helps one body and steals from another. These are not grand choices, but they decide whether a person sleeps, dozes, or spends half the night rearranging misery into new shapes. You help spread the first hide. It opens reluctantly. Cold has stiffened the edges so they curl inward, like they want to return to being animal. 2 hands hold one side while you smooth the middle. There is a repaired tear near the corner, the stitches tight and slightly raised. That corner is placed away from the shoulder line, because raised stitches become large after midnight. A seam that means nothing at dusk becomes a personal enemy in the dark. Objects mark claims as the bedding grows. A pouch at one edge, a folded wrap near another, a stone placed beside a child's space. Not ownership in the modern private room sense, more like tonight's memory made visible. This is where the elder's knees will go. This is where the child must be kept from the draught. This is where the person who tends the fire can sit up without crawling over 3 sleeping bodies. The cave floor becomes social before it becomes comfortable. A small patch near the hearth remains open. It is not forgotten. It is reserved for movement. Feet will need a path to the fire, to the entrance, to the fuel, to whatever problem arrives after everyone thinks the arrangements are finished. If bedding covers every useful route, warmth will be gained and then lost through chaos. Someone points to the open strip when a younger person tries to drag a hide across it. The hide is pulled back. The path stays. Your knees ache from crouching. Your hands smell of grit and old stems. A bit of dry grass clings to the grease on your thumb. The fire gives enough light now to show the chosen sleeping ground as a rough crescent beside the hearth, layered but not yet occupied. Scraped floor beneath, dry stems above, hides waiting, a wall avoided, a hollow blocked, a path kept clear, a draught still being watched. The floor has not become soft, it has been argued with. That is the difference. The cave offered stone, cold pockets, damp edges, sharp flakes and awkward slopes. The group answered with scraping, testing, smelling, moving, laying, reserving, rejecting. You look down at the place your body may spend the night and understand that comfort is too large a word for it. The better word is possible. A final flake is found near the edge and lifted away. The rolled skin marking the bad hollow shifts as someone steps past it. The fire pops once, sending a pinprick of orange upward. The bedding crescent waits open, dry enough for now, while the next bundle of hides is dragged closer, and the cold floor holds its remaining complaints under the first thin layer of grass. The first thin layer of grass hides none of the cave's intentions. It only makes the chosen ground less immediately rude. While the bedding waits open, the fire becomes the thing everyone pretends not to worry about too much. It is small, bright at the centre, uncertain at the edges, and already asking for more than the group wants to spend. A hand brings forward a twist of dry bark and shaved wood curls kept inside clothing during the climb. The curls are precious because they catch quickly. They are also annoyingly delicate. One damp breath, one careless snowflake shaken from a sleeve, and they become sad little ribbons with no purpose. The firekeeper crouches low, shoulders rounded, and feeds them into the weak flame one by one. The flame takes the first curl and loses it, takes the second and licks along its edge. The third catches properly. Yellow light opens over the ash, and the nearby faces lean in by instinct. Nobody cheers. Fire is not praised too early. Fire has heard praise before and still gone out. Your hands hover near your chest, not yet stretched toward the warmth. It is too soon to act greedy with heat. The small fuel has to become an ember bed before larger pieces can be trusted to burn instead of sulk and smoke. A twig is set crosswise, another rests against it. The space between them matters. Fire needs air as much as it needs wood, and the cave is already a complicated lung. Controlled use of fire is vastly older than this winter night, and by the Upper Paleolithic it is central to cooking, warmth, light, tool work, protection, and social gathering. That fact can sound simple when stated from a dry page. In the cave, it means somebody must know which scrap catches first, which branch is still too damp, how close a hide can lie before sparks become a disaster, and how to keep one coal alive until morning. A group does not merely possess fire, it negotiates with it every hour. The fuel pile sits to one side, deliberately beyond stray sparks. It is smaller than comfort would like. Some pieces are straight branches, some are twisted roots, some are short, resinous bits carried because they burn hot and bright. A few fragments of bone lie nearby, not mixed with the wood yet. Bone can burn when it holds enough grease, and at Ice Age sites burned bone sometimes appears in ways that suggest people used it as fuel, especially where wood was limited. It is not the first choice if good wood is available. It is what becomes reasonable after cold has spoken for a while. You can smell the difference even before it burns. Dry wood gives a sharper, cleaner scent. Old bone and fat carry a heavier promise, useful but not friendly. A person picks up a splintered piece, judges it, and sets it back. Not yet. The fire needs to establish itself with less argument. Outside the entrance, the landscape may not offer the easy fuel imagined by anyone picturing endless forest. During colder phases of the Ice Age, many regions of Europe held open steppe tundra, scattered shrubs, pockets of woodland, riverine growth, and harsh treeless stretches. The exact local mix changes by place and period, but the lesson remains practical. Fuel has distance inside it. Every stick has been found somewhere, carried by someone, kept dry if possible, and protected from being wasted by a large, foolish blaze. The firekeeper uses a long sliver of wood to push the forming embers together, not stabbing, not stirring for entertainment, just a slow drawing inward so heat gathers. The light grows more orange. It reaches the bedding crescent and shows the raised seam on the repaired hide, the little pile of flint flakes removed from the floor, the bad hollow blocked by the rolled skin. It also shows how little warmth has reached your back. Fire is unfair that way. It warms in argument with direction. Your face begins to loosen while your spine stays tense under cold hide. One knee, angled toward the hearth, feels almost grateful. The other knee, turned toward the entrance draft, remains unconvinced. You shift a few fingers width, enough to bring both knees into the same treaty. Someone beside you moves too, and the available warm edge becomes crowded before anyone admits it. A larger branch is finally chosen. It has been split down part of its length, exposing dry inner wood. This was not done tonight for beauty. Split wood catches better. The branch is laid with its open side facing the heat, one end resting on a stone so air can pass beneath. For several breaths, nothing happens. Then a thin glow begins inside the split. The glow spreads slowly, a red line deepening under blackening grain. Specialists still debate how to interpret some Paleolithic hearth remains, because a burnt patch may represent a cooking fire, a heat source, a work light, a short visit, a repeated camp, or several activities layered over time. Ash can be eloquent, but it does not confess everything. Tonight, the hearth's purpose is not mysterious to the people crouched around it. It must give enough heat for bodies, enough light for hands, enough coals for later, and not so much smoke that sleep becomes punishment. A flat shoulder blade is used to nudge ash aside. The bone's broad curve fits the job neatly. It may have belonged to an animal whose meat fed the group earlier, or to one taken days before, or to a bone kept because flat things are always useful. Now it pushes ash without burning fingers. It tidies the hearth edge. It keeps loose embers from rolling toward the grass layer. The bone has no symbolic ambition. It is a shovel because it works. A small ember is separated and tucked under ash near one side. This little buried heat matters more than the visible flame suggests. Ash can shelter a coal for hours when handled well. A living coal at dawn saves effort, time, and possibly temper. Making fire from scratch in bitter weather is possible with the right materials and methods, but possible is not the same as pleasant. A coal hidden under grey powder is a quiet insurance policy. You reach at last toward the fire. The skin across your knuckles tightens from cold, then eases under the warmth. Fingertips sting. That sting is heat returning, not comfort yet. A child nearby tries to push both hands too close, and an adult catches the wrists before sparks can teach the lesson. The child pulls back, offended by safety. The adult keeps one hand around the small fingers until the child forgets to resist. The smoke behaves for now. It rises, spreads under the roof, and moves toward the entrance in a grey band. The hide screen is adjusted once, a lower corner pulled back by a stone's width. Cold enters more cleanly. The flame leans, steadies, and keeps working along the split branch. No one wastes words on the adjustment. The smoke leaving is answer enough. A dull piece of damp wood is placed near the hearth, not in it. It will dry slowly, turning from problem into fuel if the night gives enough time. That is the sort of planning winter demands. Not grand strategy, just putting tomorrow's useful thing close enough to begin changing now. Another small stick is pulled away from the child's foot. The best fuel is moved farther from the sleeping edge. A spark climbs, vanishes, and leaves the dark roof unchanged. The fire is still not large. It should not be. A great blaze would burn through the pile, brighten the cave, and make everyone briefly happy in a way they might regret before dawn. This smaller fire is less impressive and more intelligent. It builds a heart of coals. It dries one future branch. It warms the first layer of bedding without threatening it. It gives just enough light to see who is taking too much space near the warm side. Your hands withdraw and tuck under your arms, carrying heat back into the hide wrap. The branch settles lower with a soft crack. Red grows inside it. The fuel pile waits under watchful eyes, divided between now, later, and not unless things become worse. The cave entrance holds its narrow draught. The smoke continues outward. The bedding crescent lies beside the hearth, beginning to take on the fire's colour, while the cold underneath remains patient. The cold underneath remains patient, so the next work belongs to the layers that must interrupt it. The fire has coloured the bedding crescent, but colour is not heat. A hide warmed by light can still bite when a hip presses down. Someone tests the edge with 2 fingers, then with the side of a wrist, because fingers lie after being near flame. The wrist gives a better answer. Still cold. Better than stone. Not enough. A rolled skin is dragged closer with both hands. It leaves a dusty line across the cleared floor. The roll is tied with a narrow strip of hide gone stiff at the knot, and for a moment, nobody wants to spend warm fingers opening it. Then the knot gives. The skin unfurls in a heavy, uneven flap, not like cloth, not obedient. It remembers the shape of drying. One edge curls back toward itself. Another edge lands on the grass with a low slap that sends dry stems skittering. The smell arrives after it opens. Smoke, fat, old hair, worked skin, a faint sourness where damp once entered and was never fully forgiven. It is not pleasant, but it is familiar. Familiar counts for more than pleasant tonight. A strange smell would be worse. You hold one corner while another person shakes loose grit from the fur side. Not too hard. A hard shake wastes heat and throws dust into faces. The fur catches firelight along the guard hairs. Some hairs are broken. Some are clumped where grease has darkened them. One patch has been repaired from the flesh side, the seam raised but strong. That patch will not go under a shoulder. The person arranging it turns the hide halfway, frowns, turns it back, then places the repaired edge toward the feet. In Ice Age cold, animal skins were not decorative softness, they were technology. Scraping, stretching, softening, smoking, greasing, cutting, stitching, and repairing hides turned a successful hunt into insulation that could keep working long after the meat was gone. Bone scrapers, awls, needles, and hide-working marks belong to that wider world of labour. A fur under the body, a wrap over the shoulders, a stitched foot covering, a sling, a pouch, a screen at the entrance. All of them begin with skin made usable by tired hands. A second hide is thinner and smoother, perhaps better for folding. It has less fur and more flexibility, which makes it useful for closing gaps. You lift it and feel the cold stored inside it. Materials keep their own weather. Near the fire, the surface warms first, while the middle stays stiff. A hand rubs a lump of fat into a cracked place along the edge. The fat darkens the skin. It also leaves a shine on the thumb that will find its way onto everything else, because grease has the travelling habits of gossip. No one treats that grease as dirt. Not exactly. Fat is too useful to insult casually. It feeds people, fuels small lamps, softens hides, protects skin, helps with adhesives in some tool-making traditions, and marks every object it touches with a stubborn trace. In a winter camp, fat is food, repair, light, smell, and trouble. The same lump can save a seam, enrich a mouthful, or ruin a clean grip on a tool. Cleanliness here is not absent. It is simply outvoted by usefulness. The fat is warmed briefly between palms before being worked into the hide. The person rubbing it has cracked knuckles, dark in the lines. The motion is firm, almost annoyed. A hide that dries too hard becomes noisy, stiff, and less willing to fold around a sleeping body. Too much grease can make it heavy or attract filth. Too little, and the edge splits. There is no perfect condition. There is only the condition that gets you through the night. Researchers are still split on the question of how often Paleolithic bedding included thick hides, plant layers, brush, moss, or combinations that varied by season and group, because the softest evidence usually disappears first. Stone flakes remain in the ground with irritating confidence. Grass rots, hair decays, sinew vanishes. A whole night's comfort can leave less trace than one careless chip of flint. So the bedding has to be understood through rare preservation, tool use, hearth placement, and the plain fact that bodies on frozen ground need help. A bundle of plant stems is lifted and redistributed under the heaviest pressure points, hips, shoulders, the place where knees will stack. The stems are laid thicker near the wall side, but not touching the damp wall. One stiff stalk pokes through, and you pull it out before it becomes a midnight enemy. It leaves a tiny tunnel in the layer. Another stem slides into your sleeve. You find it with your wrist and let it stay for 3 breaths, because reaching for it would open your wrap. Then, irritation wins. You remove it and drop it near the fuel path, where someone else immediately moves it away from sparks. A curious small thing appears from a pouch. A pad of soft hair or downy underfur kept in a scrap of hide. It is not enough for a blanket. It is just enough to stuff a hard corner, pad a seam, or warm the space around a child's foot. The pad is teased apart and pressed into a fold at the bedding edge. Such tiny saved bits rarely survive in the archaeological record, but they make practical sense in a world where no useful softness is thrown away quickly. A handful of hair can become insulation. A scrap can become repair. A repair can become sleep. You sit back on your heels and lower one hip onto the prepared place. The difference is immediate but modest. The stone no longer attacks directly. It sends its cold through grass, hide, and fur in a slower voice. Your hip still knows the ridge underneath. Your shoulder will know another one later. But a thin pocket of warmth forms where your weight presses the fur down. The body approves before the mind does. The person beside you folds an outer garment into a roll and places it behind where the lower back will rest. Clothing is never only clothing tonight. It becomes wedge, pillow, draft blocker, padding, cover, storage, and argument. A hide cape laid over 2 people may keep both warm, unless one sleeper pulls during a dream and turns generosity into theft. A belt can cinch bedding around feet. A sleeve can cover a face. A hood can trap breath and then become damp enough to regret. The fire gives a small pop. Everyone near the bedding looks toward it, not startled, just checking. Sparks are tiny things until they land where they should not. One ember has jumped near a loose hair clump. A hand brushes it away with a quick, flat motion. The smell of singed hair rises, sharp and brief. The owner of the hide makes a sound through the nose that is not quite accusation, because accusation would require deciding who deserves it. The repaired skin is pulled over the plant layer at an angle. Another person tucks its edge under the first roll so the draft cannot lift it easily. Your fingers help press the fold down. The fur is rough at first, then warmer where your palm stays. A little ash smears across the hair. Nobody removes it. Ash is already part of everything. The sleeping ground now has a thickness the eye can see. Grass hidden below, hide over it, fur turned toward the body, rolled clothing at one side, smaller scraps ready for gaps. It is still a poor bed by any gentle standard. It is also the difference between waking 10 times and waking 30. That difference has value. The child's place is padded again near the middle, not with the best full hide, but with the most forgiving pieces. Small bones and narrow shoulders need fewer ridges underneath them, or perhaps adults simply cannot sleep while a child complains into the dark. The pad of saved hair is pressed near the foot end. A stone, not yet warmed, waits beside it. The child watches the arrangement with solemn suspicion, as if deciding whether the night has met acceptable terms. Your hands are colder after handling the hides. They smell of fat and old fur. You tuck them under your arms and let the heat return in a slow sting. Around the bedding the group continues adjusting. One fold flattened, one crack avoided, one damp corner turned away, one seam moved from shoulder to thigh. The cave floor has not surrendered. It has been delayed by labour, grease, hair, plant stems, and the stubborn belief that a body deserves at least a narrow chance at warmth. The branch in the hearth settles deeper into itself. Red light works along the split grain. The layered bed waits for bodies to complete it, and the hides lie open with every patched edge, greasy thumbprint, loose hair, and tucked scrap ready to take their part in the long work of not freezing. The hides lie open, but they are not a bed until people make them one. That is the awkward part. Fur can be folded into gaps, grass can be shifted under a hip, a cracked patch can be turned away from the shoulder. People are less cooperative than bedding, especially when tired, hungry, cold, proud, and convinced they remember exactly who had the warmer side last time. You lower yourself near the edge of the prepared crescent, not the outermost edge, but not the centre either. The centre has already been shaped around smaller bodies and older bones. A child is guided inward with a hand between the shoulders. An elder sits near the wall side, but not against the damp wall, knees angled toward the fire. The watcher keeps closer to the entrance path. Someone with a sore leg extends it where heat can reach without blocking the hearth. None of this is announced. Bodies know the order before mouths have to risk making it rude. Small hunter-gatherer groups in Ice Age Europe likely depended on close cooperation, sharing food, labour, information, childcare, fire tending, and protection across kin and social ties. That does not make the group gentle in every moment. Cooperation is not the same as constant sweetness. It can include irritation, bargaining, old grievances, and the quiet power of knowing exactly who did not carry enough wood. Still, when night comes hard, people draw together because heat behaves better in company. The first body lies down, then another. The bedding shifts under weight, and the dry stems beneath the hides crackle like tiny bones. The sound makes everyone pause for one breath. Nothing has broken badly. Good. The child in the middle stretches both legs and immediately invades 2 adult spaces. A hand folds the legs back with practiced patience. The child objects with a whisper that is mostly air. A second hand pulls fur over the feet before the objection grows. You sit with one knee raised, waiting for the person beside you to settle, so you do not trap their wrap under your thigh. This is one of those small courtesies that matters more than it looks. Trap someone's wrap, and later they will pull. When they pull, the whole edge of bedding opens. When the bedding opens, the cold enters. A careless knee can become a weather event. A dog circles near the entrance side, sniffing the bedding with the solemnity of a judge who has never paid rent. It steps toward the warm edge, is blocked by a foot, and moves to a place where its body can still catch some heat. The long history of dogs and humans stretches deep into the late Pleistocene, though the exact timing and path of domestication remain debated by archaeologists and geneticists. Specialists still hesitate over whether the earliest clear domestication evidence represents one beginning, several local beginnings, or a long, uneven relationship between wolves and human groups. The animal in front of you does not care. It wants warmth, scraps, and the right to be taken seriously. It drops down with its back toward the draft and its nose toward the room. That position is useful. Not noble, useful. The ears remain active after the eyes soften. The dog smells of damp fur, old meat, and cold air, a sharp outside smell that briefly cuts through the heavier bedding scent. A child reaches one hand toward it. An adult stops the hand before it gets to the ear. Even a familiar animal has teeth, and bedtime is already full of enough negotiations. The cluster tightens by degrees. Nobody wants to seem desperate for warmth, but everyone is. A hide is drawn over 3 sets of knees. Someone pulls too far. The far edge lifts from your ankle. You pull it back, slowly, so the movement looks like correction rather than accusation. The other person lets go by the smallest possible amount. Peace is restored, although not generously. A quirky rule emerges around feet. Feet must be managed before sleep, or they will cause trouble all night. Cold toes search for warmer bodies. Damp wrappings spread chill. A restless child's heel can strike an adult shin with the accuracy of a thrown stone. So feet are tucked, paired, overlapped, folded into shared fur, or aimed away from the fire if sparks are a risk. One young person is turned slightly because their feet have a reputation. Nobody says this plainly. The body is rotated. The problem is solved, and the reputation remains. The elder receives a rolled skin behind the lower back. It is pushed into place from behind, then adjusted when the elder grunts. The grunt does not mean thanks. It means, not there, fool, higher. The helper moves it higher. A second grunt means acceptable, though no one should become proud. Old joints have their own language, and winter makes them fluent. Your shoulder touches the person beside you. Heat gathers there quickly, a narrow shared warmth between 2 layers of hide. Your other side remains open to cooler air. You pull your arm inside your wrap, leaving the sleeve empty, then tuck the sleeve across your ribs as padding. The movement makes the tool pouch press against your stomach. You shift it down. It knocks softly against a bone awl inside. The person beside you opens one eye, checks that you are not stealing fur, and closes it again. Social space is written through such glances. Who may sleep near the fire? Who must keep clear of the path? Who gets the softer hide? Who is allowed to grumble? Who is ignored? In a group this small, rank is not always a formal title. It appears in who is answered quickly, who is left to wait, who can make a sound and have bedding moved, who can complain and be met with silence. The cave does not create these rules. It makes them harder to hide. The child near the centre starts to wriggle out from under the fur. An adult presses one palm gently over the child's hip and holds until the movement stops. Not forceful, firm. The child's breath warms the fold near the chin, then dampens it. That will be uncomfortable later, but better than uncovered shoulders now. A tiny ornament tied near the child's clothing catches firelight for a moment, perhaps a pierced tooth or bead, then disappears under fur. Personal ornaments are well known from many Upper Paleolithic contexts, made from shells, teeth, ivory, bone, and other materials. In the cave it is not an exhibit. It is a little hard thing that must not scratch the neck in sleep. The fire lowers slightly, and the cluster responds before anyone commands it. Shoulders round inward, knees draw closer. The dog scoots a handspan toward the warmth and pretends this is not a decision. The watcher uses one foot to block it from pushing into the child's space. The dog sighs through its nose, deeply wronged by civilization. You are almost lying down now. One hip finds the ridge under the bedding that earlier seemed handled. It was not handled. It was waiting. You shift half an inch and the ridge moves from hip to thigh, which is not victory, but maybe the best treaty available. A fur edge brushes your mouth. It tastes faintly of smoke and old grease. You turn your face enough to breathe past it without opening a gap. Around you, the cave fills with the sounds of people becoming a single sleeping shape. Clothless hide creaks, grass compresses, a cord is retied, someone swallows, the elder coughs once, the dog's claws click as it folds its feet. The cluster is not peaceful in the pretty sense. It is crowded, negotiated, rank-conscious, itchy, useful, and alive. The fire gives one narrow band of heat. The bodies make the rest. A final adjustment travels from the centre outward. The child is covered. The elder is propped. The watcher remains half upright. Your sleeve lies across your ribs. The shared hide reaches your ankle again. The person beside you stops watching your hands. The dog keeps one ear lifted toward the entrance, offended, but employed. Under the layered skins, warmth begins to join from body to body, while every exposed edge of the crescent still waits for a chance to let the cold back in. Every exposed edge of the crescent still waits for a chance, and the first thing to take that chance is smoke. Not cold this time. Smoke. The fire has settled into a low, useful burn, which should be good news, except one damp piece near the side begins to complain. It darkens, hisses once, and sends up a thicker grey thread that rises toward the roof, spreads, and hesitates. That hesitation changes the cave faster than a shout. The watcher sees it first. Their head tilts, not toward the entrance, but toward the ceiling. The dog lifts its nose. A few sleepers open their eyes to slits. You keep still, but the taste reaches you anyway. Bitter, dry, a little oily from fat on old fuel. It sits at the back of the tongue and makes the mouth remember thirst. Smoke has its own geography. It climbs because it is warm, then travels according to the roof, the entrance, the wind, and all the awkward shapes that make this cave unlike every other cave. Near the hearth, the upper air grows dirty first. Near the floor, the air stays cleaner but colder. That sounds like a choice until your nose is in the cold strip and your eyes are still stinging from the warm one. The hide screen at the entrance has shifted during the settling of bodies. A lower corner is tucked too far in, blocking one path for incoming air. The smoke no longer leaves in the narrow band it found before. It rolls along the roof, folds back and begins to sag over the sleeping crescent. No one panics. Panic wastes breath, and breath is exactly the subject under review. The watcher reaches for the entrance screen with one foot at first, trying not to stand. The foot nudges the stone that holds the lower edge. The stone does not move. It has become, in its own small way, committed. The watcher exhales through the nose, then rises in a crouch, careful not to knock the spear, careful not to open the whole bedding edge with one careless heel. A mainstream fact is close enough to sting the eyes. Hearths in Paleolithic shelters gave warmth, light, cooking heat, and protection, but they also produced smoke in spaces with no chimneys. Ventilation was not a decorative feature. It shaped where people could sit, work, and sleep. Soot on cave ceilings, ash layers, and hearth placement all show that fire lived inside these spaces. But living with fire meant living with its waste as well as its gifts. The watcher lifts the hide screen by a handspan. Cold air slips in low and quick. Several bodies tighten under the fur. Your knees draw toward your chest before you decide to move them. The smoke thins slightly, but the draft also steals the warmth that had been gathering around your ankles. The cave makes a bargain, then changes the price. A child coughs. One small cough only, but it cuts through the group. The caregiver closest to the child turns the child's face downward toward the cleaner air near the bedding, pulls the fur edge away from the mouth, and waits. The child breathes, coughs once more, then settles. No one says anything. The hand stays on the child's back longer than necessary, counting the rise and fall through hide. The surviving evidence refuses to settle the question of exactly how smoky an ordinary winter sleep was in any one Ice Age cave. A blackened ceiling can speak of repeated fires, but not of the hour when smoke bothered the child, or the night when wind made the entrance useless, or the person who slept lower because the upper air burned their eyes. Archaeology preserves the stain. It does not preserve the watering eye. You turn your face down and sideways. The fur under your cheek smells of old animal and ash. Better than smoke. Not much better, but enough. Your nose finds the colder layer near the bedding edge. The air there is sharp and clearer. Your forehead remains in the smoky warmth above. The body becomes divided into climates. Cold nose, hot eyes, warm knees, chilled ankles, damp breath at the collar. Someone near the hearth adjusts the fuel instead of the entrance. The damp piece is pulled back from the hottest part with the flat shoulder blade. A glowing coal rolls after it and has to be caught with a quick scrape. The coal leaves a red streak in the ash. The damp wood smokes harder for a moment, offended by movement, then quiets when it is set near the side to dry rather than burn. The firekeeper feeds in a smaller, drier twig. Flame rises cleaner. There is a peculiar little tool beside the hearth, a hollow bone tube darkened at one end. It may be used for many things in other hands and other moments, but tonight it narrows breath into a careful stream. The firekeeper lifts it, places one end near the ember bed, and blows gently. Not a dramatic blast, a thin push of air. The coal brightens from dull red to orange, the twig catches more fully, and the flame takes over the work that smoke had been doing badly. A tube like that would not announce its use clearly to anyone finding it thousands of years later. It could be a bead blank, a whistle, a pigment tool, a broken object, a piece used for blowing on embers, or something else entirely. Objects often refuse to keep one job for the convenience of future labels. In the cave, the only label that matters is whether it helps the ember breathe without putting lips too close to heat. The smoke changes again. Cleaner flame sends less of it upward, and the entrance draft, now corrected, pulls the grey band toward the mouth. The watcher lowers the hide screen slightly, testing. Too low, and the haze folds back. Higher, and the cold crawls over the feet. The hand pauses at the edge, feeling the wind. Then the hide is fixed not where it looks neat, but where the smoke leaves. Your eyes continue to water after the worst has passed. That is the annoying part. The body does not accept corrections instantly. The smoke taste stays. A tear runs sideways into the fur and cools there. You wipe it with the back of a hand, leaving a darker smear on skin already marked by ash. The person beside you does the same. Neither of you looks dignified. Dignity has limited use when everyone has been lightly smoked like stored meat. The elder near the wall mutters a phrase that might be complaint, advice, or the old habit of talking to fire as if it is a difficult relative. The firekeeper answers by moving one more twig. Good enough. The elder stops. This may be agreement. It may be victory. It may be sleep reclaiming the mouth before another opinion forms. Smoke teaches the cave's shape more honestly than light does. Light shows surfaces. Smoke shows movement. It reveals the low place in the roof where haze gathers. It finds a crack above the entrance. It exposes the way one corner of the screen ruins everything when pulled too tight. It shows why the sleeping crescent cannot creep closer to the wall, why the path to the entrance must stay clear, why the fuel cannot simply be piled wherever hands drop it. Your breathing deepens again, slowly. The child's back rises evenly. The dog sneezes once, then gives the fire a look of professional disappointment. No one rewards this. The watcher settles back into the half-sitting place near the mouth, one hand still close to the screen in case the wind shifts and the cave changes its mind again. The fire is smaller now but cleaner, a red core under a modest flame. The damp piece waits at the edge, turning from problem into later fuel. The smoke travels outward in a narrow grey ribbon, visible where it crosses the pale entrance. Under the hides, warmth begins to gather again around your knees and ribs, though your eyes still remember the sting. The cave breathes better for now, and everyone lies very still, unwilling to disturb the fragile arrangement of air, ash, hide, and cold that is letting the night continue. The fragile arrangement holds long enough for stillness to return. though stillness in the cave is never empty. It is stitched together from small sounds behaving themselves. The fire works softly at its cleaner twig. The smoke leaves in its narrow ribbon. The child breathes without coughing. The dog keeps its offended nose toward the entrance, where the night presses against the hide screen and then draws back. You are close to sleep when the dog stops being decorative. One ear rises first, then the head. No growl yet, only attention. The difference is small, but every body near the edge understands it. The watcher turns without lifting the spear fully. The fire is too low to throw much light beyond the entrance, and the snow outside reflects a pale, uncertain brightness. A shape could be there, or not. Winter is very good at offering shapes and refusing responsibility for them. Your own body stays curled, but sleep moves away. The tool pouch rests against your belly. The fur covers your knees. Your face is still angled toward the cleaner air. Nothing has changed enough to justify fear, which is exactly why fear arrives quietly and sits down anyway. Outside, something scrapes. Not a loud sound, a little drag against crusted snow, followed by a pause. The watcher's fingers close around the shaft beside them. Someone inside the cluster opens their eyes and does not move. Another adult lays a hand across the child's back before the child can stir. The dog stands now, stiff-legged, nose working. Its tail is still. That is less entertaining than the sneeze from earlier. Ice Age humans shared their landscapes with large predators and scavengers. Wolves, cave hyenas, cave lions in some regions, bears, and smaller opportunists that followed scent, carrion, warmth, or simple curiosity. Not every sound outside belongs to a dangerous animal. Most probably do not. But the cost of being wrong is higher than the cost of listening. So people listen. The cave mouth becomes the whole world for several breaths. The hide screen blocks part of the view, but a gap near the side shows a strip of snow. The firekeeper does not build the flame high. That would waste fuel and throw sparks. Instead, a dry sliver is placed at the edge of the ember bed, just enough to sharpen the light. It catches with a quick yellow line. The entrance gains a thin outline. Snow, stone, a dark edge of scrub beyond. The scrape comes again, farther to the left. The watcher shifts 1 foot, and a dry bone near the hearth rolls a fraction. It clicks against another bone. Everyone freezes, including the person who caused it. The click is not large, but it travels through the cave like a mistake with legs. A little scatter of bone pieces has been left near the entrance path for just this reason, perhaps not arranged as a formal alarm, but useful if disturbed. Dry bone speaks when touched. Tonight, that is almost a tool. A quirky little pile, really. Cracked rib, antler scrap, a hollow splinter, the kind of fragments that are not yet trash because nothing in this place becomes trash quickly. If something noses past the screen or a half-asleep foot slides where it should not, the pieces clatter. A warning does not need elegance, it needs sound. Researchers continue to disagree about how deliberate such warning arrangements may have been in deep prehistory, because a scatter of bones near a cave mouth can mean food waste, tool material, dog interest, careless housekeeping, or a useful, noisy barrier. The future will not know which part of tonight is design and which part is mess. The people inside only care that the bone clicked before anything larger did. The dog gives a low sound now, not a bark, a pressure in the throat. Enough. The watcher lifts the spear or long point across the knees and leans toward the entrance without standing fully upright. Standing would show more body to the cold, and perhaps to whatever waits outside. Crouching keeps balance low. Another adult near the bedding edge reaches for a hammerstone. The motion is slow, hidden under fur until the hand closes around it. You do not reach for anything. Your job, if it has one, is to stay still and keep from opening the hides around the child and elder. This is harder than it sounds. The body wants to raise the head. The neck wants a better angle. The eyes want proof. Proof is not always available, and moving for proof can make everyone colder. A shadow crosses the side gap. It may be an animal. It may be wind pushing scrub across snowlight. It may be your tired eyes turning fear into a visitor. The dog decides before you do. It takes one stiff step forward and growls properly, a quiet, tearing sound that seems too large for its body. The watcher answers not with a shout, but with fire. A dry twig goes in, then another. Flame rises just enough to fill the entrance zone with sharper light. The hide screen's edge glows dull brown. The snow beyond brightens. The dark patch outside breaks apart into scrub, stone, and movement sliding away down the slope. Something small or medium-sized, perhaps, not the great disaster your mind had already begun building. Fox, wolf at a distance, hyena nosing from below, or only a scavenger drawn by smell and disappointed by company. The mark vanishes before certainty can attach to it. Nobody celebrates. Celebration would be foolish and also too loud. The dog stands in the firelight, immensely pleased with itself in a restrained way. Its hackles lower by degrees. It sniffs once toward the outside, then turns its head as if checking whether the group has recorded its competence. No one gives it a scrap. This is probably unjust from the dog's perspective, which tends to be broad in matters of compensation. The watcher waits longer. This is important. The sound leaving does not mean the danger has left. It may only mean the first sound has finished. The wind presses the screen again. The bones near the path stay quiet. The flame falls back. The snow strip remains empty. Only then does the watcher lower the spear to rest across the knees, still close. Your heart takes longer to lower itself. It beats against the hide wrap and the tool pouch. The warmth under the fur has thinned where your body tightened. Your toes have curled hard inside their wrappings. You release them one by one, feeling the ache return. The child beneath the central hide gives a small sigh and does not wake. That feels like a success larger than the shadow deserved. Experts remain cautious about claiming exactly how Ice Age groups organised night watches, because wakefulness leaves almost no direct trace. Hearths renewed through the night may suggest tending. Entrances arranged with screens or objects may suggest planning. Dogs or early domestic canids may have added warning where present. But the actual sequence of who sat, who slept, who listened, and who pretended not to be afraid has mostly gone with the breath of those people. Tonight, the logic is enough. Fire must be watched. Entrances must be heard. Sleep has edges. The watcher shifts after several more breaths, easing the leg that has gone stiff. A knee cracks softly. The sound is human, ordinary, almost comforting after the scrape outside. Someone inside the bedding whispers something too low to catch. The whisper may be a joke about the dog's bravery. It may be a complaint about the twig just spent. It may be a warning to go back to sleep before the child notices everyone is awake. The dog circles twice before lying down, now a little closer to the entrance gap than before. Its body blocks part of the low draft, useful again. The firekeeper moves the extra flame back into thrift, drawing ash around the brighter coals so they do not spend themselves too quickly. The cave returns to smaller sounds: ember, breath, fur, wind, the dry settling of bones that did not have to speak twice. You remain awake a little longer, not because you choose to, but because the ear continues working after the danger has grown uncertain. The night outside is full of harmless movements wearing the clothing of threats. Snow shifts, scrub scratches stone, the hide screen tightens and slackens. Your mind sorts each sound and lets it pass, one by one, while the watcher stays upright at the edge of the hearth and the dog keeps its nose aimed at the dark gap where the next sound has not yet arrived. The next sound does not arrive. Not for a while. The watcher remains upright. The dog remains appointed to its own important office, and the rest of the cave slowly accepts that fear has spent itself for now. Your ear keeps sorting the dark, until hunger slips back into the space fear has left. It begins under the ribs, not sharp, a hollow, low insistence. The kind of hunger that does not make speeches because it knows it will be heard. Your body has been making heat for hours, feeding warmth into fur, breath, muscle, and the small pocket between your knees and the person beside you. Cold takes payment. It always does. Near the hearth, a hand reaches toward the tied food pouch. The movement is slow enough not to wake everyone, that several eyes open anyway. Food has a sound even before it appears. Hide cord pulled loose, dry meat shifted, bone against bone. The dog's head rises instantly, proving that its service at the entrance has not weakened its larger commitment to opportunity. A strip of dried meat comes out first, dark, stiff, uneven at the edge where it was cut or torn earlier. It bends only slightly. The person holding it warms one end over the fire, not cooking it, just softening the surface enough that teeth may have a fair chance. The smell grows stronger. Smoke, old blood, fat where there is fat, and the faint sweetness of meat kept past freshness but not past usefulness. Food before the deepest cold is not indulgence, it is maintenance. The body needs fuel inside, not only fire outside. In Ice Age hunting societies, animal fat and protein could be crucial winter foods, especially in cold environments where plant foods were limited by season and landscape. Lean meat could fill the stomach and still leave the body craving energy. Fat mattered, marrow mattered, grease mattered so much that people cracked bones, rendered what they could, carried it, stored it, and watched it with the seriousness other people reserve for gold. The strip reaches you after two others have bitten from it. You take the offered end and pull a small piece free with effort. The meat resists, then gives suddenly. Your jaw works in slow, tired circles. The taste is dense and smoky. It wakes saliva from a dry mouth. It also reminds you that you want more than you will receive. Nobody eats alone in the warm centre unless they want everyone to remember. A piece passes. A smaller piece is held back for the child, though the child sleeps. Someone tucks it near the caregiver's hand for later. Another sliver goes to the elder, who chews carefully, as if the jaw has filed a complaint and is being negotiated with. The watcher receives a piece without turning fully from the entrance. The dog watches every transfer as if studying law. The evidence remains frustratingly divided on the exact rules of Paleolithic food sharing, because bones can show butchery, marrow extraction, transport choices, and species hunted, but not the look someone gives when the better fatty piece goes elsewhere. Ethnographic comparison can help, but it must be used carefully. Small foraging groups may share through kinship, obligation, need, success, memory, or tension. Here, in the cave, the rule feels simple and not simple at all. Food moves where the night requires it, and everyone notices the root. A cracked long bone is brought closer to the ember edge. It has already been opened, but not emptied completely. Its inside still holds a dull, greasy shine. Someone uses a narrow splinter to scrape the hollow. The sound is faint, wet against hard. The scraped bit goes into a mouth, then another. Nothing wasted. A child would be told not to gnaw the sharp edge, and an adult does exactly that for one brief, practical moment before turning the bone away from the lip. The quirky treasure of the hour is a little grease packet. It is wrapped in hide and tied with a cord, lumpy and unimpressive, with one corner dark from handling. It may hold rendered fat, softened marrow, or scraps pressed together because every rich bit deserves a second chance. The packet is warmed near the fire just until the surface loosens, not too close. If it melts into the ash, the cave will witness a tragedy too greasy for words. A thumb presses the packet. A small piece is pinched away and given to the person who has been shivering near the outer side. No explanation. The shivering person takes it, puts it into the mouth and closes the lips quickly, as if flavour itself might escape. Fat coats the tongue. It brings warmth differently from meat, slower and deeper, a promise the belly understands before the fingers do. You receive a smear more than a piece, rubbed onto a scrap of meat. That would sound disappointing in daylight. In this cave it is excellent. The fat changes the chew. It makes the dried fibres less punishing. Your jaw thanks nobody, but complains less. Food storage in cold climates can take many forms: drying, smoking, freezing, caching, carrying meat in skin bags, keeping marrow bones, saving fat, or using natural cold as an ally when animals do not steal the plan first. The exact method depends on place, season, and available materials. Tonight's pouch is portable wealth. It is not large, but it is time-made edible. Morning is inside it. Perhaps tomorrow's difficult walk is inside it too. Someone opens a smaller wrap and reveals a few hard things that are not meat. A shriveled berry perhaps, a bit of root, a dry fragment of plant food saved from better ground or better season. It is passed to the child's caregiver and not around the whole group. Nobody argues. Plant foods in Ice Age Europe varied widely by region and season, and they rarely survive as dramatically as bones. But people were not simply meat machines wandering through snow. They gathered what the land offered when it offered it. Winter just narrows the offer. Your teeth find a gritty speck in the meat. Stone dust, ash, bone powder, something from the pouch. You work it to the side of the mouth and swallow anyway, because standards have shifted. The dog receives a scrap at last, small enough to insult it and large enough to confirm its faith in human society. It snaps the piece once, swallows, licks the stone where it landed, and looks up for the appeal process. No appeal is granted. The fire smells richer now. A tiny bead of fat falls from warmed meat onto a coal and flares with a sharp scent. Several faces turn toward it. Hunger is easily fooled by smell. Your stomach tightens again, though food is already in your mouth. The pouch is tied before the smell can persuade anyone to generosity that morning will punish. A person presses the cord knot flat and tucks the pouch near the bedding, within reach of a responsible hand. Responsibility is mostly the art of keeping food away from dogs, children, half-asleep adults, and one's own hopeful fingers. The responsible hand remains on the pouch for a moment after tying it, as if reminding itself not to open it again. The chewing slows. The cave grows quieter with the labour of digestion. Warmth comes from inside now, in a faint spread under the ribs. It is not enough to make you comfortable. It is enough to make the cold less victorious. Your fingers still smell of grease where you touched the meat. You rub them together, then tuck them beneath your arm, saving the scent and the heat whether you mean to or not. The watcher takes the last allotted bite and keeps looking toward the entrance. The dog lowers its head, but leaves its eyes open a crack, in case history becomes edible again. The child's saved piece rests near the caregiver's hand. The elder swallows with care and leans back into the roll. The grease packet, smaller now, returns to its wrap. Under the hides, bodies begin to settle in a different way. Food makes the group heavier. Fear has thinned. The smoke is manageable. The cold remains, but it has more to work against. You draw the fur under your chin and feel the meat sitting in your stomach like a small banked ember. Beside the hearth, the tied pouch waits in the half-light, holding what must not be eaten yet, while the longest dark continues around the cave with a quieter mouth. The tied pouch waits in the half-light, and the longest dark grows colder around the feet first. It always begins there, where the body has the least patience and the wrappings have done the most work already. Your stomach holds its small banked warmth from the meat, but your toes seem unconvinced by events happening so far away. They curl inside their bindings, searching for any pocket of heat left from walking, fire, or luck. A hand moves near your ankle, not yours. Someone beside you is trying to free the edge of a foot wrap trapped under your calf. You lift just enough to let it slide. The movement opens a line of cold under the shared fur, and two people react at once, pulling the hide back down with quiet irritation. Clothing has become bedding now, and every garment is involved in a second life it did not formally agree to. You loosen the cord at your waist by one thumb's width. The relief is immediate. The day's knot has pressed into the belly through climbing, crouching, eating, and lying twisted near the fire. But loosen too much and warm air escapes. Loosen too little and sleep keeps finding the pressure. So you make the smallest change possible, then tuck the cord end under itself where it will not slip. A belt in daylight holds tools and clothing. At night, it becomes a valve. Upper Paleolithic people in cold regions almost certainly needed fitted, layered clothing, and the evidence for eyed bone needles shows that sewing technology was well established tens of thousands of years ago. The clothes themselves rarely survive, but the tools speak plainly enough. Skins could be cut, shaped, joined, patched, tightened, and repaired. In a brutal winter, a stitched sleeve or shaped foot covering is not a luxury. It is portable shelter with elbows. The seam at your wrist has been bothering you for a while. It rises where two hide pieces overlap, stitched with sinew that has stiffened in the cold. During the day, the seam holds against wind. At night, pressed between arm and ribs, it becomes a narrow ridge with opinions. You turn the sleeve slightly, easing the seam away from the soft inside of the wrist. The fabricless skin creaks, then settles. A small victory. No one sings. The person on the other side pulls one arm entirely inside their outer wrap and leaves the sleeve empty. The sleeve is folded across the chest as padding. You copy the motion with your own looser side. The garment becomes a blanket, the sleeve becomes a draft stopper, the hood becomes a warm pocket for breath. These shifts happen in silence because everyone knows them. A piece of clothing that only does one job is a poor companion in winter. A fur hood is drawn closer around your face. It catches breath at once. Warmth gathers near the mouth, but damp gathers with it. That is the bargain. If you breathe into the same place too long, the edge will grow wet, then cold, then stiff enough to brush the skin like frozen leather. You angle your face so each breath leaves under the fur but not directly into the seam. This is the sort of tiny night skill nobody carves into bone, though it may save more sleep than a spear point. Interpretations continue to differ over how exactly Ice Age garments were cut and layered, because needles, awls, and hide scrapers survive far better than parkas, leggings, mittens, and boots. Some researchers use climate, toolkits, wear marks, and comparison with later Arctic clothing to imagine close-fitting layers. Others warn that direct reconstruction can outrun the evidence. The cave does not settle the debate. It only makes one thing obvious. Loose skins alone would be a poor answer to this cold if anyone had to move, work, and sleep. Your feet need attention. You draw one knee toward your chest under the hide and reach down carefully. The outer wrapping around the foot is damp along one edge, where snow melted earlier and refroze into a hard lip. You crack the lip with your fingers, wincing at the cold it releases. Inside, the softer stuffing has flattened under the toes. Dry grass, hair, moss, or shredded fibre can all serve as insulation when available, but insulation crushed flat becomes less loyal. You tease it loose with 2 fingers and push it back toward the front of the foot. The quirky habit is saving every scrap that can warm a toe. A little twist of dried grass tucked into a pouch, loose underfur from a hide, a wad of hair combed free during scraping, a piece too small for bedding but too useful to throw away. These bits look like sweepings. In winter, sweepings can become comfort. Someone near you shakes a foot covering softly, and a sprinkle of old grass falls out. It is gathered back, sorted by touch, and reused. Pride is not invited to this meeting. Your other foot covering is placed under your thigh for warmth. It is not elegant to sleep with a boot-like wrap near the body, but a frozen shoe at dawn is a cruel little object. Better to keep it close, smoke-smelling and slightly unpleasant, than to force a numb foot into it while morning wind cuts through the entrance. The covering presses against your leg, lumped and damp at the edge. You accept it. Ancient winter has reduced your standards with impressive efficiency. Hands disappear next. A person near the centre has sewn hand coverings, simple but shaped enough to hold the thumb separately. You have a strip of hide wrapped around fingers curled into a fist. Both methods aim at the same problem. Fingers must work in the morning. They must tie, cut, lift, scrape, carry, feed the fire, manage a child, and perhaps hold a weapon. Losing feeling in them is not just uncomfortable, it delays everything. Your fingers curl under your armpit, where the body keeps one of its warmer stores. The grease from the meat pouch still scents the skin. A dry flake of ash sticks near the nail. You think about wiping it off, then do not. The hand is warm there. Warmth outranks neatness by a large margin. Around the sleeping cluster, garments keep shifting roles. A cloak is folded under an elder's knees. A spare hide strap ties the foot end of a shared fur so it cannot slide away. A child's wrap is tightened, then loosened again when the child complains in sleep. A hood is turned backward by someone who wants padding more than face cover. A belt with a small tool loop is removed before the loop digs into a hip. Each change costs a little cold and buys a little rest. Clothing also carries the day's record into the bedding. A smear of fat near the cuff. Ochre dust trapped where the seam overlaps. Hair stuck to grease at the hem. A rough place where stones scraped the hide. A tiny tear that will need sewing when light returns. The garment is not clean, but it is not neglected. It is being used hard. Those are different things. You settle again. The waist cord no longer bites. One foot slowly warms against the stuffing you loosened. The other foot covering presses under your thigh like an awkward animal. Your sleeve lies across your ribs, blocking a draft that had been moving under the fur. The seam at your wrist has quieted. The hood edge brushes your cheek, damp but tolerable for now. The fire has lowered to a redder glow, and clothing makes the difference between that glow being enough and not enough. Under the hides, every tucked sleeve, folded wrap, tightened foot binding, reused grass wad, and hidden hand becomes part of the bed. The body is not undressed for sleep. It is rearranged inside its own shelter, while outside, the fur edge the cave keeps its cold floor ready for any gap careless enough to open. Any gap careless enough to open is found first by the smallest sleeper. The child near the middle has turned again, one knee pushing out from under the shared hide, one hand lost somewhere near your sleeve. The movement is not large, but the bedding answers like a net. Fur tightens across one person's ribs, a foot covering shifts under your thigh. The elder's folded knee roll slips lower by a finger's width. Several adults wake into the same problem without fully admitting they are awake. A caregiver reaches across the warm center and guides the child's leg back under the fur. The child resists with the limp determination of sleep, which is somehow harder to manage than waking protest. The hand waits, then turns the knee gently inward. The hide is tucked down. The child's breath comes fast for a few moments, then slows. The cave returns one small piece of quiet. The most protected place in the cluster is not soft, and it is not private. It is simply surrounded. Children, babies, the very old, and anyone weakened by illness or injury belong closer to the middle when the cold is hard. This is not a tender idea arranged for a painting. It is heat management. A small body chills quickly. An old body stiffens. A coughing body may not recover well after a night at the edge. The warmest place is a resource, and resources are assigned with memory. Paleolithic burials show that children could be treated with care and symbolic attention, sometimes buried with ochre, beads, tools, or other objects depending on the site and period. That does not tell us exactly how every child slept on every winter night, but it pushes back against the lazy idea that children were merely background noise in prehistoric life. They mattered, they were protected, carried, taught, fed, adorned, corrected, and probably complained about with great regularity. The baby makes a small, searching sound from beneath a wrap. A woman, or another close caregiver, draws the baby higher against the body, using clothing as cover without opening the whole sleeping edge. The motion is economical. One arm moves. A fold lifts. Warm skin meets cold cheek. The sound stops before it becomes a cry. Everyone near the center remains grateful without saying so. Milk, breath, fur and smoke mix in the air above the caregiver's chest. The smell is close and human, different from meat or damp hide. The baby's head disappears under a fold, then shifts until the nose is clear. The caregiver's hand stays there, not resting exactly, but measuring. Babies do not respect the geometry of bedding. They slide, twist, overheat, chill, and produce noise at the least democratic moments. Keeping one warm without smothering it in fur is skilled work, even when done half asleep. Modern scholarship still has not quite resolved how to reconstruct family arrangements in Paleolithic bands from burials, campsites, and scattered objects. A grave can show care after death. A living floor can show children were present, perhaps through small footprints, miniature tools, or objects worn by young bodies. But kinship, nursing, adoption, shared care, and daily tenderness do not fossilize neatly. The evidence gives edges. The middle must be approached with caution. The elder coughs, and the cave holds still around the sound. It is not the earlier smoke cough. This one is deeper, dry at first, then rough. A person near the wall lifts the edge of the elder's wrap and adjusts the roll behind the back. The elder swats once, a weak motion with plenty of opinion. The helper ignores the swat and pushes the roll higher. Better posture may help the breath. It also keeps the elder from sliding into the damp curve of the wall. Old age in a mobile Ice Age group is difficult to see clearly because skeletal survival is patchy and age estimates can be uncertain. But individuals with healed injuries and long-term impairments are known from prehistoric contexts, showing that care could extend beyond immediate usefulness. Care does not need to be saintly to be real. It can be practical, irritated, routine, and still necessary. The person who cannot walk quickly tonight may still remember where the herds crossed when the thaw came late, or how to cut a hide so the seam does not fail at the elbow. The elder's foot wrapping has loosened. Someone reties it in the dim light, fingers working close to the hearth glow. The knot is not pretty. It holds. The elder mutters again. This time the mutter may be thanks hidden under complaint, or complaint hidden under more complaint. Either way, the foot is covered. Near the child's feet, the warmed stone has lost its heat. The child still presses against it as if loyalty might revive it. A sleepy older child, not fully awake, pushes the stone away with a heel. It rolls toward the open path and stops against a tool pouch. You catch it before it reaches the hearth edge. The stone is cool now, no more useful than any other rock, but its surface still feels smoother from handling. It has become a night object, passed between fire and feet, important out of proportion to its size. A warmed stone is hard to prove in deep prehistory unless found in the right context with heating traces, and even then its exact use may be debated. But the habit belongs to a broad human logic. Put heat into something that will release it slowly, wrap it so it does not burn, place it where cold gathers. Tonight the stone is returned near the ash, waiting to be warmed again if fuel and patience allow. A tiny ornament tied to the child's clothing catches against the hide and makes the child fuss. The caregiver finds it by touch. It may be a pierced tooth, a small shell bead, a worked bit of bone, or a simple charm worn close to the body. Upper Paleolithic people made personal ornaments from teeth, shells, ivory, bone, and stone, sometimes carrying materials over long distances through exchange, movement, or social ties. Here it is less grand than that sounds. It is a small, hard thing stuck under a sleepy child's shoulder. The bead is shifted to the side. The child settles again. The hand that fixes it lingers at the child's neck to check warmth. Not too hot. Not cold. Good enough. Your own position narrows as the centre is repaired around the vulnerable sleepers. The child's leg no longer pushes into the open, but now the caregiver's elbow presses near your ribs. The elder's adjusted roll has moved one folded hide toward your hip. You could object. You do not. The cave is full of tiny unfairnesses ranked by urgency, and yours is not near the top. The dog, having contributed nothing to childcare, stretches one paw into the warmer zone. The watcher nudges it away with the side of a foot. The dog withdraws the paw slowly, as if making a moral point. Its body remains near the edge, useful as a draft block and possibly as an alarm, though not as a nursemaid. The baby makes another faint sound. The dog's ear twitches, then ignores it. Everyone has specialties. The firekeeper warms the stone again, this time carefully, turning it with 2 sticks before wrapping it in a scrap. Too hot would be worse than useless. The wrapped stone travels hand to hand across the bedding. Each person lifts the hide edge just enough to pass it without spilling warmth. It reaches the caregiver, who places it near the child's feet but not directly against skin. The child curls toward it, satisfied by heat before waking enough to know why. Under the fur, your foot has cooled where the earlier movement opened the edge. You slide it closer to the warm center, stopping before it touches the child. Boundaries still exist, even in a pile of sleepers. The caregiver notices and draws the child's wrap tighter. Fair enough. You retreat by a finger's width and tuck your foot under your own calf. The elder's cough fades into rough breathing. The baby quiets. The child's hand appears from under the hide and rests against your sleeve, cool at first, then warmer. You leave it there. Moving it would wake the child, open the fur, and create a problem larger than a small hand on your arm. The cave has trained everyone to accept certain inconveniences quickly. The protected center holds again. Child, baby, elder, warmed stone, adjusted roll, tightened wrap, bead moved aside, dog excluded from the best heat despite its legal arguments. Around them, adult bodies form the outer ring, each one losing comfort so the middle can keep warmth. The fire glows low. Smoke leaves cleanly. The entrance remains dark, and the child's fingers slowly uncurl against your sleeve, while the group's fragile sleepers borrow another stretch of night. Another stretch of night is borrowed, and the cave asks for payment in images. The child's fingers lie warm now against your sleeve. The elder's breathing has settled into a rough rhythm. The dog stays near the entrance with its nose aimed outward. Nothing moves where the last shadow was. Yet your eyes keep returning to the dark beyond the hearth, where firelight ends in a line that looks less like darkness and more like a decision. The ember bed gives a red pulse under ash. A small flame appears when a hidden twig catches, then slips away again. Each change remakes the wall. A bulge of stone becomes a shoulder. A mineral streak becomes a hanging arm. A soot mark above the hearth gathers itself into the curve of a horn, then loses it. The cave is not doing this on purpose. Your tired mind is doing plenty of unpaid labour. Fear in this place is not foolish. It is a way of checking. Darkness hides uneven ground, damp hollows, sleeping tools, animal sign, and the deeper passage no one has entered tonight. It also hides nothing at all, which is less comforting than it should be. The body does not wait for certainty before preparing. It tightens first and asks scholarly questions later. A mainstream fact presses softly behind the scene. Upper Paleolithic people made extraordinary art in some deep caves of Europe, far beyond daylight, using pigments, engraving, lamps, and careful movement through difficult spaces. Horses, bison, mammoths, lions, deer, rhinoceroses, handmarks, signs, and other forms appear on walls in different regions and periods. Those chambers were not ordinary sleeping rooms. They were entered for reasons that still trouble and fascinate the people who study them. You are not going deeper tonight. The fire must breathe. The children need the warm centre. The elder cannot be dragged through a black passage for curiosity. Still, the knowledge of the deeper dark sits behind you like a person who has not spoken. A cave can be shelter at the mouth, and something else farther in. Worksite, memory place, animal den, painted chamber, store of echoes. Bad idea. Sometimes all of these, depending on where the foot goes. Near the hearth, a small lump of red ochre rests in a hide scrap. It has rubbed a stain onto the fold. The red looks almost black until the flame catches it, then it glows dull and earthy, like dried blood without the wetness. Ochre was widely used in prehistoric contexts for pigment, body decoration, burials, objects, and practical mixtures in some cases. In the cave tonight, it is not a grand explanation. It is a piece of coloured earth that gets on fingers, hide, hair, and anything else careless enough to touch it. A child would reach for it if awake. The child is not awake, which is good for everyone's wrists, bedding, and social peace. The small ornament at the child's neck has already caused enough trouble. Red hands would make a new kind. The flame lifts again and catches the ochre's edge. On the wall behind it, a stain of stone looks briefly like the flank of an animal. Not painted, not even convincing after a second glance, but for one breath, your eyes complete it. Back, shoulder, head lowered. Then the fire shrinks and the animal disappears into rock. The mind has a dangerous kindness. It gives shape to what the light cannot finish. Modern scholarship still has not quite resolved whether deep cave art served mainly ritual, social, teaching, shamanic, mnemonic, territorial, playful, or mixed purposes that changed by place and time. The images remain, the motives do not stand beside them explaining themselves. Lamps, footprints, pigments, tools, and wall marks give clues, but not a single answer. The cave preserves the animal's line better than the human reason for making it. You blink because the earlier smoke has left the eyes tender. Moisture gathers at the corner and cools quickly. The fur under your cheek scratches. The child's hand twitches once against your sleeve, then rests again. Your own fingers are tucked under your arm, wrapped around a little warmth. The tool pouch presses lower now, no longer sharp under the ribs. These small bodily facts help keep the darkness from growing too large. A whisper passes from one adult to another near the fire. Only a few words. Perhaps a warning not to stare into the passage. Perhaps a comment about the dog. Perhaps the beginning of a story that decides not to become one. Stories in a cave do not need a proper opening. They can start with a name, an animal, a mistake made by someone's uncle, a place where the roof dripped badly, a warning about going too far without flame. A scrap may be enough. The rest can wait inside the listener. The dog dreams. Its paws twitch, and its lip lifts from the teeth for a second. The shadow thrown on the wall is much larger than the animal, a crooked black shape with legs that do not line up properly. It should be funny. It is funny, very quietly. But it also proves how easily fire makes a monster out of a sleeping dog. The watcher notices and lowers one hand toward the animal's back, not touching, just ready in case the dream becomes a bark. A tiny stone lamp sits near the hearth, shallow and darkened. It is not burning now, but its rim holds a trace of old fat. Lamps using animal fat and wicks of plant fibre or moss are known from Paleolithic cave contexts, and they made movement into deep darkness possible. That little fact feels different when you are lying here. Light is not free. The same fat that could warm a belly or soften a hide can also feed a flame so a wall can be seen. Seeing costs food. Even wonder has an appetite. Your breathing slows. The passage remains black. The wall animal does not return. The ochre lies where it is, red only when fire allows it. The dog's dream fades, and its paws stop moving. Outside, the wind rubs at the hide screen with a dry, steady pressure. Inside, the fire lowers again, and the known world shrinks by the width of a hand. The shrinking world is not empty of safety. Tools are still close. The child is covered. The elder breathes. The watcher sits near the entrance. The smoke leaves cleanly. The warmed stone holds a little heat near the child's feet. These facts are stronger than the shapes on the wall. Not more beautiful, stronger. Still, the deeper dark keeps its silence. It holds old stains, possible marks, cracks, cold pockets, and the part of the cave no one has chosen to trust tonight. You lie with your face half turned toward the fire and half turned away from smoke, while the red light works over stone, fur, ochre, dog ear, sleeping hand, and the unreadable passage beyond, where the eye keeps trying to make animals and the rock keeps returning them unfinished. The rock keeps returning its animals unfinished, and your hand comes back to the things that do finish their jobs. Not beautifully, reliably. The tool pouch rests inside your wrap near the belly, where body heat keeps the hide from stiffening too much. It presses against you whenever you breathe deeply. Its corners are hard. Its contents are harder. You do not open it fully. That would spill small, sharp things into fur, grass, and darkness, which is a very direct way to create tomorrow's injury tonight. Instead, you loosen the tie and slip 2 fingers inside. Touch does the seeing. A scraper's rounded working edge, a thin flint flake wrapped in a scrap, the narrow taper of a bone awl, the smooth length of a needle kept apart from everything else, because a needle loose in bedding is not a tool anymore. It is a future curse. The fire is too low for careful work, but not too low for checking what must not be lost. A hunting point lies near the watcher's knee. A hammerstone sits beyond the bedding edge. The flat shoulder blade rests beside the hearth, blackened where ash has touched it. These objects are arranged less neatly than they were at dusk, but none are far away. Night does not make tools unnecessary, it only makes them harder to find. Upper Paleolithic people made complex toolkits from stone, bone, antler, ivory, wood, hide, sinew, and plant fibre. Flint and other knappable stones could be shaped into blades, scrapers, points, burins, and small cutting flakes. Bone and antler could become awls, needles, points, wedges, handles, or ornaments. The skill involved is easy to underestimate if the finished object looks simple. A good edge is planned. A needle eye is earned. A hafted point is a small engineering problem tied together with materials that do not always enjoy cooperating. A sound comes from the far side of the bedding. Not danger. Frustration. Someone is trying to repair a loose hide tie in the dark. The foot end of a shared covering has begun to gape, letting cold creep under the fur and travel upward along shins. The person sits half raised, shoulders hunched, breathing through the teeth while fingers search for the torn hole. The cold has made the hide stiff. The hide has chosen this hour to become difficult, which is very like hide. An awl is passed hand to hand, not tossed, not even slid loosely. The point is covered by the giver's palm and received by touch. The person with the torn tie pushes the awl through hide slowly, twisting rather than stabbing. A fast push might split the edge. A slow twist opens a new hole just far enough from the old tear to hold. The motion takes longer than anyone wants. The cold waits at the gap with admirable professionalism. The written sources leave room for disagreement about the exact division of tool use and repair work among Paleolithic people, because there are no written sources, and because skill does not fossilise with a name attached. Wear marks can show what tools did. Burials, handprints, skeletal traces, an ethnographic comparison can suggest patterns cautiously. But the person making this small night repair remains unlabelled by the future. In the cave, no label is needed. The foot end is open. Someone who knows what to do is doing it. A sinew cord is threaded through with 2 attempts, then 3. It slips once from numb fingers and lands on the fur. Everyone nearby freezes until it is found again. A cord lost in bedding can vanish into folds as if eaten. The cord is recovered near your knee, warm from lying under the hide for a breath. It is returned. The repairer pulls it tight, makes a knot, tests it, pulls again, and finally lets the hide edge fall back over the feet. The cold line closes. The awl comes back along the same careful route. You feel its point before you feel the shaft and adjust your fingers quickly. A shallow prick at the thumb would not be serious, but blood on hide creates work, and work creates opinions. You wrap the awl again and tuck it into the pouch. The thumb throbs anyway from the near miss, as if reminding you that caution is not optional. The quirky little object in your pouch is the needle's shelter. A tiny case of hide, perhaps stiffened, perhaps reinforced with a sliver of bone, just enough to keep the needle from snapping or wandering. It looks like nothing, a scrap folded over another scrap, but it protects one of the most important tools in the cave. Lose the needle, and torn footwear stays torn. Break the eye, and thread becomes an argument. A tool that can disappear into a handful of grass deserves its own house. You touch the needle case again before closing the pouch. Still there. That knowledge settles something in the chest. Morning will bring cold fingers, stiff garments, damp edges, and repairs that cannot be postponed. The needle will be needed, if not by you, then by someone whose sleeve, boot, pouch, or child's wrap has chosen failure. Sewing is not decoration here. A stitch keeps heat in motion with the body. The hammerstone near the bedding edge is nudged inward by someone's foot. The sound is dull against the floor. A watcher's hand stops it before it rolls toward the open path. The hammerstone is not sharp, not delicate, not clever-looking. It can crack bone, strike flakes, drive a point, pound frozen material, break ice, or make a noise that convinces an unwelcome animal to reconsider the evening. It is blunt confidence in object form. It is also dreadful under a hip, so it stays outside the bedding. A worked point near the watcher receives a brief check. The binding is touched, the shaft is turned. No full repair now, too little light, too much risk of losing a splinter, too much need to keep eyes near the entrance. The point is placed back across the knees, not because an attack is expected every moment, but because the distance between expecting and needing can be short. Tools sleep lightly when people do. The fire's red core reflects on a flint flake lying outside your pouch. It must have slipped free earlier, perhaps when the food passed, perhaps when you shifted from the ridge under your hip. You see it because the edge catches light, a narrow, bright wink from the floor. You reach slowly and pick it up between thumb and forefinger. It is cold, almost slick. The edge is sharp enough to cut skin before pain announces itself. This is the problem with useful debris. A flake can cut meat, scrape fibre, slice sinew, trim hide, or open a finger in the dark. Work areas and sleeping places must be kept apart when possible, but winter caves compress everything. Fire, bedding, food, tools, repair, children, dogs, damp hides and tired legs all crowd into the zone where warmth survives. Organisation is real. So is clutter. Archaeologists may one day draw clean plans of activity areas. They will not draw the moment a flake hid under fur and waited for a bare wrist. You slide the flake into the pouch and tie it properly this time. The cord is stiff, the knot resists. Your fingers are warm enough to manage it, but not warm enough to enjoy the task. When the pouch is closed, you move it lower against your belly, where it will not dig under the ribs. It remains uncomfortable. Useful things often are. The repaired footage holds. The child stays asleep. The elder mutters once and then sinks back. The watcher's point lies ready across the knees. The needle rests inside its little shelter. The hammerstone sits beyond the path, solid and patient. Around the hearth, the tools keep their places in the red half-light, not displayed, not admired, simply near enough to answer whatever breaks before morning. You lie back carefully, feeling the pouch settle against you with its small, hard shapes. The wall beyond the fire has stopped making animals for the moment. The cave has returned to objects: edge, cord, awl, point, stone, ash, hide. Each one holds a piece of the night together, and one loose flint has already warned you how quickly help can turn sharp when it is left in the wrong place. One loose flint has already warned you how quickly help can turn sharp, and after that warning, sleep comes back in cautious pieces. It does not lower itself over the cave like a blanket. It arrives in fragments, slips away, returns under another shape. A breath, a twitch, a coal shifting, the ache in your hip, the child's hand no longer on your sleeve, the pouch pressing softly into your belly where you moved it. You sink, then surface. The first waking is hardly waking at all. Your eyes do not open, but your body counts the cave. The fire is lower. The air tastes less smoky than before. The fur under your cheek has warmed to your skin. Your right foot is tolerable. Your left foot is thinking about betrayal. Somewhere near the entrance, the dog gives one low, sleeping huff. Not warning, only dream. The watcher shifts weight, and a knee joint makes a small, dry sound. No clock hangs in the cave. No bell marks the hour. Time is measured by substances changing state. Flame to ember, warm stone to cool stone, damp breath to frost at the hood edge, meat in the stomach to hunger returning, a cramped arm to numbness, a sleeping child to a turning child. Night is read through decay, need, and the fire's slow arithmetic. Before modern artificial lighting, human sleep in many societies could be shaped by season, labour, light, temperature, and nighttime duties, rather than by one fixed block. Later historical evidence suggests segmented sleep in some communities, though it should not be projected too neatly into the distant Paleolithic. Still, this cave offers many reasons not to sleep straight through: fire tending, cold, smoke, animals, children, pain, hunger, and the ordinary unfairness of lying on geology. Your eyes open after the next ember click. The cave appears in dull red and deep grey. Most bodies have become rounded bundles. The elder is a raised shape near the wall. The watcher sits at the mouth, head lowered, perhaps awake, perhaps resting on the thin edge before sleep. The dog has curled smaller, nose tucked beneath tail, abandoning public service for private warmth. Your shoulder has gone numb. Moving it will open the fur. Not moving it will make the numbness turn to pain. You choose a middle path and fail at both. The shoulder slides a little, the bedding pulls. Someone behind you tightens their grip on the shared hide. A cold line enters along your spine, brief and exact. You stop. The line fades as the hide settles again. The shoulder remains half numb, which is apparently tonight's compromise. The child in the centre sighs. Her caregiver's hand moves before the sound finishes, finding the wrap edge, checking the feet, touching the warmed stone. The stone is no longer warm. It has become a memory with weight. The caregiver draws it out and passes it toward the hearth without lifting the fur high. Hand to hand, it travels over knees and sleeping rolls until someone near the fire receives it. The stone is tested against a wrist. Too cool. It is placed near the ash edge, not in the hottest centre. A stone heated too fiercely can burn through a scrap or crack. A stone heated gently can give back a little comfort. This is not a grand technology. It is a good idea repeated because feet keep becoming cold. Archaeologists and historians do not entirely agree on how much nighttime labour can be inferred from hearths that appear to have been maintained or relit during occupations. A renewed hearth might mean people woke repeatedly, or that embers lasted from evening to morning, or that activities continued in shifts. The trace is ash, charcoal, burned bone, heated sediment. The lived part is a person blinking in the dark, deciding whether the child's stone is worth warming again. The firekeeper, or perhaps the second watcher, draws ash away from one coal. Red opens under grey like a hidden eye. A dry shaving is set near it. The shaving curls. Smoke rises faintly. A careful breath through the hollow bone tube brightens the coal. The shaving catches and gives a small flame, just enough to warm the stone's wrapped future and show the watcher's tired hands. Your own body takes this as permission to notice another problem: the bladder. It announces itself without ceremony. You lie still and hope the announcement was only passing weather. It was not. Leaving the bedding means losing heat, disturbing people, finding the path, avoiding flint, facing the entrance cold, and returning to a place that has cooled in your absence. The body is very unreasonable, but rarely impressed by arguments. You wait. Waiting changes nothing, except your respect for everyone who has already made this journey tonight. Finally, you begin. First, the tool pouch is moved so it will not fall. Then your hand finds the edge of the hide. You lift it only enough to slide one knee free. Cold enters at once. The person beside you gives a small sleeping grunt of disapproval. You pause, as if the grunt might be legally binding. It is not. You continue. A foot touches the cleared path and lands on something small. Not sharp. A bone crumb. You shift around it. The cave floor is colder than memory allowed. Your body, freed from the cluster, seems suddenly badly designed. Too many surfaces, too much skin under hide, too many places for air to enter. You crouch low, pull your wrap around you, and move toward the entrance path where the watcher turns their head just enough to know who is passing. A faint pale light sits beyond the screen, not dawn, only snow holding the night. You do not go far. Nobody sensible wanders into full darkness half asleep, unless the cave has become truly impossible. The hide screen lifts. Cold air strikes your face and enters your clothing like it has been personally invited. The outside smell is sharp: snow, stone, distant animal trace. your own smoke-filled wrap suddenly obvious in cleaner air. The necessary moment passes quickly and not elegantly. History is full of such moments and does not usually paint them. You return before the cold can become complete. Snow grains cling to one foot covering. The watcher glances at the ground behind you, checking what you may have brought in on your soles. Not disgust, practicality. Wet snow near bedding becomes damp. Damp becomes complaint. Back under the hide, your place has cooled. The body beside you has not saved it out of affection. It has merely occupied the warmth near the edge and is reluctant to give it back. You slide in slowly, pressing your feet under your own calf, then toward the shared heat without trespassing too far into the child's space. Warmth returns with a painful prickling. The toes wake one by one, all of them annoyed. A peculiar kind of timekeeping resumes. The child's stone comes back warmer and wrapped. The dog dreams again, paws moving once, twice, then still. The elder coughs after a long, quiet stretch. The watcher touches the screen when the wind shifts. A coal is covered, a twig is saved. Someone scratches under a seam. Someone whispers a word that may be a name. The cave's night is broken into tasks so small they nearly vanish. Sleep takes you again while you are still thinking about the returning heat in your feet. The thought dissolves before finishing. The cave remains. Then you wake because your jaw has slackened and cold air has found the damp edge of your hood. You tuck your chin lower. Sleep returns. Then the fire clicks. Wake. Then a breath near your ear. Sleep. Then the dog lifts its head and lowers it. Wake, but shallow. Sleep, but not far. This is how the night becomes bearable. Not by becoming peaceful, but by becoming divisible. A long frozen darkness would be too much if held whole in the mind. Instead it is coal, foot, child, ash, breath, stone, smoke, hip, dog, cord, sleep, wake, sleep again. Each piece is handled. None is allowed to become the whole story. The ember bed glows low under its ash cover. The warmed stone is back near the child's feet. Your place in the cluster has sealed again. The tool pouch rests where it should. The watcher sits with chin lifted toward the entrance, listening without drama. Your eyelids lower into another brief piece of sleep, while the cave keeps dividing the night into small, solvable things. And somewhere under your ribs, the last of the meat's warmth fades into the slower warmth of bodies staying close. The slower warmth of bodies staying close holds until the cave gives it a new problem. At first the problem is only a sound. A small drop lands beyond the hearth. Then another lands closer, not in the fire, not on a body, but near enough that several sleeping minds include it in their dreams before anyone opens an eye. A third drop hits hide. The person beneath it wakes with a sharp inhale and lifts one shoulder. The movement pulls the shared fur sideways, opens a cold seam over your knees, and presses the child's warmed stone against the wrong foot. A hand finds the wet spot by touch. Another drop lands on the same place, precise and insulting. The hide darkens in a small round mark. Water has found a crack above. It may be thaw loosened by fire, or frost disturbed by warmer air, or old moisture working down through stone at the most inconvenient hour available. The cause matters less than the spread. A damp patch in bedding is not a decorative issue. Wet fur loses loft. Wet hide stiffens. Wet plant stems flatten and rot more quickly. A cold shoulder becomes a sleepless shoulder, and a sleepless person becomes a source of opinions. The sleeper under the drip rises halfway. The whole cluster tightens in protest. You trap the fur edge before it slides from your legs, but the cold has already entered. The child murmurs. The caregiver shields the centre with one arm and pulls the wrapped stone back into place. The elder coughs once, perhaps from the movement, perhaps from the smoke, perhaps from the long-standing irritation of being alive in winter. Caves and rock shelters are not sealed rooms. They leak, shed flakes, hold damp pockets, channel wind, trap smoke, and change as frost, thaw, weather, and fire alter the air inside them. This is a mainstream truth hidden behind the cozy word shelter. A roof of stone helps only if it sends water somewhere else. Tonight, somewhere else has become too close to a sleeping shoulder. The watcher leaves the entrance side and crouches near the drip. That movement itself is news. The entrance is not abandoned entirely. The dog lifts its head as if promoted, then immediately looks uncertain about the duties. A flat bone is found near the hearth, the same useful shoulder blade that has moved ash and guarded coals. Now it is angled under the falling water, wedged between two stones so the drops run down its curve and into a shallow hollow in the floor. It works badly for the first 3 drops, then better. A broken shoulder blade of some large animal has become a roof repair. This is the kind of object use that disappears into ordinary life. Bone does not arrive with one purpose printed on it. It scrapes, scoops, wedges, shields, catches, and occasionally lies under someone's elbow until cursed. If found later, it might look like refuse, a tool, or a puzzle. In the cave, it is keeping cold water off someone's back, which is purpose enough. Nobody entirely agrees on how often changing cave conditions forced Paleolithic groups to abandon a shelter for the night, or leave it sooner than planned. Archaeological layers may show repeated use, gaps, ash lenses, debris shifts and changes in activity, but they rarely preserve the moment when a drip, smoke reversal, animal sign, quarrel, or cough made a place feel no longer worth the trouble. Tonight, the answer is not abandonment, not yet. The answer is adjustment. The wet hide has to move. That creates the next argument. The person under the drip wants inward space. Inward space is already occupied by child, elder, warm stone, caregiver, and the best of the shared heat. The request comes as a whisper, but the shape of it is clear. Move. Let me in. I am wet. Someone else answers in a whisper that means essentially, so is life. The watcher's head turns. That is enough. Small groups do not need loud authority every time. They need everyone to remember that morning has a long memory. The wet sleeper is given a narrow compromise, a folded roll under the shoulder, a strip of dry fur over the damp side, and a place angled slightly away from the drip line. Not the centre, not the edge. A grudging settlement with elbows. You help past the dry strip. Your fingers brush the wet hide, and the cold on it feels larger than the patch looks. It soaks into the skin at once. You wipe your hand on your own wrap, then regret that too, because now your wrap has inherited a smaller version of the problem. A poor trade, but already made. The wet corner is propped near the hearth, not close enough to scorch, close enough to steam faintly. The smell rises. Damp fur, old grease, warmed mineral water, ash. It is a heavy smell, and it changes the cave's mood more than the drip did. Dry smoke and old hide are familiar. Wet hide carries the suggestion of work postponed. It will need drying, scraping perhaps, turning, checking for hair slip, and watching so it does not become worse. The dog decides the new smell requires investigation. It noses toward the propped hide. A foot blocks it. The dog changes direction with offended dignity and lies down farther from the drip, proving that its understanding of shelter is excellent when self-interest is involved. The drip continues onto the angled bone. Tick, tick, tick. The regular sound threads itself through the cave. It is better than water on bedding, but worse than silence. Each drop lands, slides, and falls into the hollow below. The hollow begins to shine. Someone pushes a little grit into one side to guide the water farther from the sleeping place. This works for a while. For a while is a major category of human technology. Then the smoke shifts. Not because of the drip directly perhaps, but because people have moved. The wet hide has been placed near heat, and the entrance screen has stiffened along one lower edge. The fire's low smoke no longer travels cleanly. It spreads under the roof and curls toward the wall before finding the mouth. The watcher returns to the entrance, nudges the screen, and discovers that frost has hardened one fold. It will not bend easily. A stick is used to knock the frost from the edge. The sound is dull, then crisp as frozen bits break away and fall onto stone. Cold air enters through the opened gap. Several bodies fold tighter. The smoke begins to leave properly again. The price is paid in ankles and noses. A cough starts near the outer side. This time it belongs to the person who was already near the draft earlier. A skin of water or melted snow kept from the fire is passed across the bedding. Only a small drink. Water at night is not casual when melting it costs fuel. The coughing person takes it, swallows, breathes through the nose, and hands it back before anyone can worry about waste. The cough eases, though the throat keeps a rough sound after. Illness in deep prehistory is difficult to catch unless it marks bone or teeth, or unless a burial preserves the end of the story. A winter cough that passes leaves no neat artifact. A fever that changes a group's route may leave only absence. Care can be visible in healed injuries and long survival with impairments, but the smaller acts vanish, passing water, shifting a sleeper away from draft, giving a better fur to someone whose breath sounds wrong. The cave remembers none of it unless ash happens to fall in the right place. The wet sleeper finally lies down again. The dry strip covers the shoulder. The damp hide steams near the hearth, watched by the person most likely to be blamed if it burns. The drip catcher holds. The entrance draft steadies. The cough quiets into rough breathing. The dog resumes its chosen silence, which may be service or sleep. Your own place is narrowed from all the repairs. The wet sleeper's elbow is close to your ribs. The child's warm stone presses against the edge of your calf through the hides. Your hand, still slightly damp from passing the first strip, is tucked under your arm and warming slowly. The cave has not failed. It has merely demanded more work from people who had hoped to be unconscious. The firekeeper draws ash over the brightest coals to keep them from spending themselves too quickly after the extra flame used for repairs. The red dulls. The wet hide releases one last visible thread of steam. The shoulder blade under the drip ticks steadily, a bone roof beneath a stone roof, while the cluster closes around its patched arrangement, and the night keeps going with one corner damp, one cough quieter, one screen newly cracked free of frost, and one problem waiting to see whether it has truly been solved. One problem waits to see whether it has truly been solved, and the answer comes slowly, drop by drop, breath by breath. The shoulder blade keeps catching water. The smoke keeps finding the entrance. The cough does not return at full strength. None of this feels like victory while you are lying there with one damp hand under your arm and a stranger's elbow near your ribs. But the cave has stopped getting worse, and through the hardest part of the night, that is often the best kind of mercy. The darkness near the mouth begins to thin before it becomes light. At first, it is only a change in the snow beyond the screen. The black gap turns charcoal. The charcoal turns grey. The watcher notices it first because the watcher has been staring at that edge for longer than any person should. The dog notices next and lifts its nose, taking in cold morning air through the gap where frost was knocked away. You wake because the group loosens. Not all at once. A shoulder pulls back. A foot withdraws from under the shared hide. The child's hand vanishes from the warm centre. Someone shifts the warmed stone away because it is not warm anymore, only a wrapped lump with a reputation. The bedding loses its sealed shape, and cold enters every opening with the confidence of an old creditor. Your body reports itself in pieces, hip first, then neck, then the shoulder that slept too close to the ridge, then the toes, which are present but not enthusiastic. The hand that touched the damp hide has warmed again, though the wrap under your arm now smells faintly of wet fur. You sit up slowly, keeping the hide around your back until the last possible moment. Sitting makes the cave larger and colder. The fire is a low mound of ash with red hidden inside. The firekeeper leans forward, face grey in the first light, and draws ash aside with the flat bone not currently serving as a drip catcher. A coal appears, small, alive. That red point steadies the whole shelter. Paleolithic hearths often leave ash, charcoal, burned bone, heated sediment, and repeated fire traces at occupied sites, and those traces matter because fire was not just a moment of flame, it was continuity. Evening into night. Night into morning, cold body into moving body. A coal surviving under ash is labour carried across darkness. A dry shaving is laid against it. Breath follows. Smoke comes first, because smoke likes to remind everyone who is in charge. Then the shaving catches at one edge, and a thin flame rises. The firekeeper feeds it no more than it needs. Morning fuel must not be spent in one grateful burst. Outside is still winter. The day has not become generous because the sky is paler. The cave floor reveals itself with the plain cruelty of dawn. Bedding stems crushed flat, ash smeared by knees and feet. A flint chip near the path missed in the night. A dark wet patch where the drip ran before the shoulder blade took over. Grease marks beside the hearth. Dog prints crossing everything as if the animal has been conducting important inspections. Your sleeping place, which felt like a whole world in darkness, is suddenly a small, messy crescent of used materials. The drip has slowed. Water still beads above, but less often now. The shoulder blade rests at an angle, wet along its curve, stone-weighted at one end. A hollow below it glints. This little arrangement would look absurdly unimpressive to anyone hoping for prehistoric grandeur. It also saved a hide from soaking through. The object has earned its mourning. The wet hide near the hearth is inspected first by smell, then by touch. The person responsible lifts a corner and makes a face that is not dramatic, only accurate. Damp remains. The fur is not ruined, but it will need drying, turning, and perhaps scraping if the hair begins to loosen. A wet hide carries work into daylight. It does not allow anyone to forget the night just because the night is over. Even now, opinion is not fully settled on how long particular Ice Age groups stayed in specific cave shelters during severe winter conditions, because repeated hearths, tool scatters, animal bones, and bedding traces can mean many patterns. One hard stay, several returns, brief storm use, seasonal visits, or layered occupations by different people. The cave floor you look at now would not explain itself cleanly to the future. It would leave ash, damp stains, broken bone, stone flakes, and let patient strangers argue over what counted as a home. A child begins to complain about cold fingers. This is the morning's first formal announcement. An adult takes the hands and rubs them briskly between both palms. The child objects to the rubbing. The adult continues. Warmth returns with friction, and dignity suffers a little. The baby stirs under clothing, making a damp, irritated sound. The elder opens one eye, then the other, and looks toward the entrance as if personally disappointed that the frozen world has remained frozen without permission. You retie the cord at your waist. It resists because the hide has stiffened in the night and because your fingers are slow. The knot that felt too tight before now has to hold your wrap against the morning draft. Clothing becomes clothing again by stages. Sleeve out, hood adjusted, foot covering checked, stuffing pushed back toward the toes. The awkward wrap warmed under your thigh is pulled free and inspected. It smells of smoke, leg heat, and damp grass. It will do. Tools are gathered before food is fully considered. The pouch is opened, the needle case is checked. The scraper is missing for 3 breaths that feel longer than they should. It is found under the fur edge, where it has no business being. The person who moved it says nothing. Everyone nearby knows silence can be a confession or a defense, and either way, the scraper returns to the pouch. The hammerstone is moved from the path. The flint chip near the entrance is picked up and saved because sharp waste is still sharp usefulness in the right hand. Outside the cave, the slope comes into focus. Snow crust, scrub, low stone, a blurred mark near the entrance where something may have passed in the night. The watcher crouches to read it. The dog pushes forward and sniffs over the same mark, ruining part of it with great confidence. The watcher exhales through the nose. Fox, perhaps, or wolf farther off, or wind dragging a branch, or the dog's own later interference turning evidence into comedy. The exact visitor remains undecided. Morning food is counted, not served. The tied pouch is opened with care. Dried meat, a smaller grease packet than before. The child's saved piece, now claimed by the caregiver and offered in tiny bites. A bit for the elder, a little for the person who will go out first, if anyone must. Food moves through need before appetite. The dog waits at the edge of the circle, having apparently learned nothing from the legal failure of the night. The fire grows enough to warm hands. Smoke rises, tests the roof, and leaves. That one clean movement makes several people look up. After a night of adjustment, it is a relief to see anything behave. The entrance screen hangs stiff at one corner where frost remains. Someone knocks it free with a stick, and pale crystals fall onto the stone. They melt almost at once near the warmed ground, leaving small dark spots that will be avoided until they dry. You stand near the threshold, the same place where the cave first had to be judged. Now it has been used. The difference is everywhere. The bedding is flattened, the hearth is alive, the wet hide waits for work, the drip catcher ticks less often, the child chews slowly, the elder's foot binding is still holding, the dog sniffs the morning as if personally responsible for it. The cave did not save anyone by being kind. It helped because people kept correcting it. A screen shifted, a coal covered, a child tucked in, a hide moved from water, a cough answered with a drink, a flint found before skin found it, a foot warmed, a watcher stayed upright. Sleep came not as comfort, but as a series of small permissions granted by stone, fire, fuel, fur, and human patience. Outside, the frozen day waits without applause. Inside, the coal has become flame again. The group begins to fold the night back into bundles, fur into roll, tool into pouch, food into knot, warmth into memory, complaint into movement. Your stiff body rises into the work of morning, carrying smoke in your hair, grease on your fingers, cold in your feet, and the plain knowledge that one more brutal winter night has passed, because nothing was trusted once, and then forgotten. The flame steadies, and the cave grows simple around it. Not easy, not soft, just simple. A low roof, a pale entrance, a few bodies moving slowly after sleep, a child chewing in small bites, a dog turning its nose toward the morning. A hide opened near the fire, damp along one edge, waiting for hands that will deal with it when the hands are ready. You do not need to follow them out into the cold. Not now. You can stay beside the hearth for a few more quiet breaths, where the ash is grey, the coal is red, and the first flame of morning bends over its twig. The night's sharp pieces begin to lose their edges. The smoke in the eyes, the hard ridge under the hip, the cold foot, the drip on hide, the shadow beyond the fire, the small sound outside the entrance. All of it moves farther away. What remains is slower. A hand reties a cord. A fur is folded. A tool pouch closes. The child's cooled stone is set beside the hearth, as if it may be needed again, though not yet. The elder sits near the warmth without speaking. The dog lowers itself to the floor and rests its chin on its paws. The wind stays outside. The cave holds a grey, gentle light now. The fire keeps its little centre. Breath leaves the mouth and disappears. The wet places dry by degrees. The hard things are gathered. The useful things are kept. The dangerous things are moved aside. You can let the scene become quiet. No more decisions for tonight. No more smoke to manage. No more shadows to answer. Only the low fire, the stone roof, the pale snow beyond the entrance, and the shared warmth of people who made it through the dark by solving one small thing, then another, then another. Let your own breath slow with theirs. Rest near the ember. The morning can wait. Sweet dreams.